We are just 1 week away from Election Day and counting. Over 60 million Americans have already cast early ballots. Now the rest is up to the nearly 180 million Americans eligible to vote. I'm Gadi Schwartz, and this is Stay Tuned Now. And right now, Vice President Kamala Harris is giving an address at the National Mall. Upwards of 20,000 people are there to hear her closing arguments, according to her campaign. And this is happening with the White House that you see right there behind her in the background. But that's not the only reason why she picked this spot. This is the exact same location where Donald Trump spoke on January 6th in 2021, right before the Capitol insurrection. The Harris team says the message tonight is supposed to be hope and optimism, and Harris has a few other campaign stops before the week is over. She's headed to Nevada on Thursday, where a campaign ad for her is going to pop up on the Las Vegas Sphere. That first presidential political ad for a gigantic futuristic ball of a billboard there. Meanwhile, it looks like the Trump campaign will also be headed into overdrive this week. He's holding a rally in Allentown, Pennsylvania tonight, a city with a high Puerto Rican population. A lot of people watching out to see if he's going to say something after a comedian at his rally on Sunday called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. We're going to get into that in just a few minutes, but first let's start with NBC Washington correspondent Yamiche Alcindor at the National Mall. Yamiche is joining us by phone because, as I understand it, the Harris campaign may not be allowing lights or cameras to be on reporters live during a speech because they say there's an issue with the reflection of the lights. But Yamiche is on the phone. So, Yamiche, what exactly are these closing arguments?
Well, yes, as you said, we are here watching her speak, but we are not allowed to go on camera. So I want to talk to you a bit about what her closing argument has been so far. And it has been that she is both laying out a vision for her plans for America, talking about things like lowering costs for Americans, talking about things like providing coverage for Americans to take care of both their elderly parents as well as their children. And she's also been hammering former President Donald Trump, standing where he stood on January 6th, right before his supporters broke into the Capitol and attacked officers as well as elected officials. So she is here really laying out a vision and saying that Americans have a choice between a Harris administration that will improve their lives and a second term of Donald Trump that will be a threat to democracy. In particular, she said things like Donald Trump intends to use the United States military against American citizens who simply disagree with him. People he calls, quote, the enemy from within. This is not a candidate for president who is thinking about making your life better. She's also going to say this is someone who is unstable, obsessed with revenge, consumed with grievance, and out for unchecked power. And then she's going to say, and has said some of this, I pledge to seek common ground and common sense solutions to make your lives better. I'm not looking to score political points. I'm looking to make progress. She's also said, I pledge to be a president for all Americans, to always put the country above the party and above self. So she's really here laying out both her vision as well as pointedly criticizing former President Donald Trump. Gadi.
And her campaign has been hyping up this speech in particular today for quite some time. A lot of people gathering there. What was their reaction to the speech that's happening right now as we see? And what was their reaction to the day as they got there beforehand?
This has really been a jubilant crowd here gathered in Washington, D.C. People are waving these mini American flags that the campaign has provided them. One campaign official told NBC News that this is really Democrats trying to reclaim patriotism and saying that not only Republicans can talk about being proud Americans, but that they should also be talking about being proud Americans. And the vice president has touched on that by saying Donald Trump's vision of America isn't who we are as a country. I've also been talking to a number of people here say that they're anxious about the results of the election, but also feel like she is speaking to a segment of the population, the vast majority of Americans, they believe, that are just tired of the division, tired of Donald Trump, and really want to move on together. And I should tell you, the campaign is telling us that there are about 75,000 people gathered here on the National Mall. I've also been talking to some local officials here, fire department officials, who say that it might be something like 65,000. The point is that there are a lot of people, thousands and thousands of people here, and it looks like it's going to be a crowd that is bigger than the crowd that gathered on January 6th for Donald Trump's rally, where 53,000 Americans gathered that day. So this is probably also going to be a point that the Harris campaign is going to make, that more Americans showed up to talk about turning the page and ushering in a new generation of leaders in Kamala Harris than the people who showed up to support former President Donald Trump as he was trying to change the election results of 2020, when, of course, we know he lost that election. Gadi.
So more conversations about whose crowds are bigger to come. Michelle Sender, thanks so much. And let's turn now to Garrett Haake, who joins us from Trump's rally in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Garrett, the former President Trump, he's not normally one for damage control, but here's a little of what he said earlier today. Garrett, it looks like
you remember you were there when I brought the hospital ship against everyone's advice, and we got it in there and took care of a lot of people. But I think no president's done more for Puerto Rico than I have.
So there it is, Donald Trump responding to some of the criticism that he's getting from the Latino community. But is the response that he gave there, the response that people, especially Puerto Rican people, wanted to hear from him? And do you think that we're going to see any more of that behind you there?
I doubt it, Gadi. I mean, look, for Donald Trump, apology is not really in his vocabulary. What the campaign wants to do is essentially blow past what happened at MSG on Sunday in terms of that comedian and try to stay focused on the issues that he thinks will help him with Latino voters and Puerto Ricans in general. I heard at the start of this event, there were 3 separate speakers in the pre-program who mentioned that they were Puerto Ricans themselves. Many of them talked in Spanish, trying to reach out to that same crowd. And the general vibe I got from Trump supporters here earlier today was that this is something they're willing to look past, even if the broader community isn't. Take a listen to one gentleman who I interviewed just outside this rally this afternoon.
That doesn't affect me at all. I don't agree with that guy. That's not what Trump is not a racist like everybody says he is. He has proven that in the past by helping other people, other races. So that does not bother me at all. That person that said whatever he had to say, it doesn't bother me because he doesn't represent me or the Latino community.
Now, Gadi, look, that's the opinion of somebody who's willing to stand in line for hours to be at a Trump rally. I don't think that's necessarily representative of the broader electorate out here, including Puerto Rican voters who I know are being pushed this message aggressively by the Harris campaign, by various outside groups, trying to make sure that people are aware of those comments from that rally, particularly people who might be politically disengaged, who might not have checked in on this race altogether up until this moment, now might suddenly at least be paying attention to that in a race that's going to be as close as we think this one's going to be. All of those votes could count.
Yeah, that makes me wonder, like, how crucial is the Puerto Rican support for Trump when you fold it into the very diverse and very nuanced Latino vote at play here?
Yeah, look, it could be huge. I mean, we've seen this over the last couple of election cycles, the Latino vote broadly moving slowly towards Republicans, picking up a greater and greater share over time. You saw it in South Florida with Cuban Americans. You saw it in Texas, my home state, with Mexican Americans. Puerto Ricans, when you dig really deep into the polling, tend to be a little bit more liberal-leaning than the rest of the Latino electorate and a little bit more skeptical of Trump personally. If this is the kind of thing that galvanizes those opinions, if it gets somebody to kind of confirm their own feelings against him, again, that's the kind of thing that could matter. And Gadi, we're talking about a slice of the demographic electorate here that has a very big presence in Florida, not really a battleground state anymore, but especially here in Pennsylvania, where, depending on the way you do the numbers, about 300,000 voting age Puerto Ricans live. That's a huge swing group, if you want to look at it that way.
Garrett Haake at tonight's Trump rally in Pennsylvania. Garrett, thank you. And speaking of Trump, his former advisor, Steve Bannon, was released from prison this morning. Bannon's been serving a 4-month sentence for contempt of Congress. And NBC's Von Hilliard has the latest.
Hey, Gadi, that's right. Look, Steve Bannon is consequential for the past and for the current present here. Let's just start with the past. folks will recall that just before the 2020 election, it was Steve Bannon who was urging Donald Trump to declare victory on election night 2020, even well knowing that a great share of the ballots would have not been counted at that point. And Donald Trump took Steve Bannon's advice and did just that. And the two men used that as a foundation to claim election fraud in the weeks that followed. And Steve Bannon and Donald Trump remained in close touch leading up to January 6th. The two men had 4 different phone calls on January 5th and 6th. But Steve Bannon went to prison for these 120 days, this 4-month sentence, because he refused to comply with the subpoena sent to him by Congress in the January 6th Select Committee, which folks will recall was led by the likes of Liz Cheney and others investigating that January 6th attack. Steve Bannon refused to talk about those conversations and what he knew, and that is what led to a jury finding him guilty and sending him to this federal prison for 4 months. Now, he is out today at 3 a.m., being released from that prison in Connecticut, and he has a major popular podcast that he left behind going into prison that he said that he will continue to pick up and use to talk to the MAGA base of support. But Steve Bannon, I asked him whether he would urge Donald Trump again to declare victory on election night, even if the results are not clear. And he hedged a little bit more, but we should expect Steve Bannon to continue to be a prominent voice, not only for Donald Trump, but also the MAGA base of support, but also those other close allies of his, because we have shown that he's willing to go to great lengths on behalf of Donald Trump before, and there's little reason to believe, based off of his comments here today, that he wouldn't do it again, Gadi.
Vaughn Hilliard, thank you. And today is the last day of early voting in Pennsylvania, and some of the swing state's newest and youngest voters are trying to take full advantage. Earlier, around 500 first-time voters marched from a local park to the Philadelphia City Hall, where many of them cast their ballots for the very first time. Gen Z could be critical this election cycle, and polling suggests they plan on showing up in big numbers. According to a recent NBC News Stay Tuned poll, about 3/4 of them say they are almost certain or very likely to vote. So let's bring in NBC News Stay Tuned reporter Maya Eaglin. Maya, what did you hear from the Gen Z voters there today?
Hey, Gadi, a lot of excitement, some fears, some nerves about the outcome of the election, but I have to tell you, there was this immense sense of pride for actually being able to cast their first ballot. There's a nonpartisan organization that organized this event called Youth PA Votes, and over 400 high schoolers came out from 17 different schools. They started in Love Park, then we marched around City Hall before ending in front there. A lot of them went to cast their ballot for the first time. Here's a few of the voters that we got to speak to.
Will this be your first time voting?
It is my first time voting. I'm actually very excited because I know that this election is very, very impactful, and especially since Pennsylvania this year is a swing state, so I know that my vote definitely matters.
It's really exciting, and I don't know, it's...
Yeah, it's all the emotions, right?
It's all the emotions.
I think it's really interesting and exciting, and I'm glad to be able to vote in this election because I think it's very decisive.
So, Gadi, these voters obviously came out to vote, but some of them told me that they have friends or peers that plan on sitting out the election because of feelings of pessimism or frustration with how politics is going in general. So definitely a close race that we'll be watching in the state for sure.
It sounded like the voters you talked to, they think that they can actually swing this election, right?
I think they do. They said they really understood the gravity and the power here in this state. They mentioned that unlike other states, the power of one vote in Philly can really sway things. We saw that in 2016. We saw that in 2020. I think they understood that. And some of them said it was pretty cool to see that everyone's eyes was kind of on them during this moment.
And Maya, historically, the youth vote favors progressive policies, Democrats. Is that still the status quo, or are there some changes that might be emerging here?
Yeah, so we asked this in our recent Stay Tuned poll of voters under 30. We saw some interesting results. Actually, 50% of them said if the election was held today that they would be voting for Harris. 30% said that they would vote for Trump. If you look a little bit closer at these numbers, there's an interesting gender divide here, a bit split between men for 42% voting for Harris, 40 said they would vote for Trump. When you look at women, 59% of women said they would vote for Harris and 26% of women saying their vote for Trump. So definitely some interesting numbers. That huge gender gap we've been talking about here will be something we're watching for on Election Day for sure.
Maya Eaglin, thank you. And for decades, newspaper political endorsing has pretty much been a given, really going back centuries to the 1800s, where the root of newspapers and political pamphlets were super partisan in their founding days. And then there's the whole history of big moments in endorsements. In 1972, the LA Times backed Nixon for president. But then after Watergate, the Times' editorial board decided to stop endorsing candidates in presidential races. And that is until 2008, when the Times editorial board urged readers to vote for Democrat Barack Obama, and ever since, it has endorsed Democrats in every presidential election until this week. The Times is joining the ranks of other newspapers like the USA Today and the Washington Post, whose editorial boards are also not going to endorse a candidate for the White House for the first time in 36 years. The Post's owners, billionaire Jeff Bezos, defending the decision, saying presidential endorsements create a, quote, perception of bias. The fallout has brought job resignations, subscription cancellations, NPR reporting that over 200,000 readers have canceled their subscriptions since Friday. It's also sparking a debate over whether newspapers or their editorial boards should be endorsing in the first place. And here to answer that existential question is Dylan Byers, senior correspondent and one of the founders of what is basically a newspaper/media organization of the future, Puck News. Hey there, Dylan. Thanks so much for joining us. There are some that see this and say this is just like billionaires scared of possible political ramifications if Trump wins, and then there are others who say like this is a long time coming. Why are newspapers deciding not to endorse, especially with just a week here to go?
Well, thanks for having me, Gadi. It is look. There's a very healthy debate to be had about whether or not newspapers should endorse, and at the end of the day, that's in the purview of the owner, right? They can decide to do what they want. I think the reason that this has blown up and become such a controversy is because of the timing, which was terribly mismanaged, no question. But should newspapers be endorsing? Look, it feels like something that we're used to because the New York Times has been doing it since Abe Lincoln, and the Washington Post has been doing it since Jimmy Carter. But the truth is that for a long time, the Washington Post wasn't doing it. And ever since they started doing it, they endorsed Democratic candidates. Same with the Los Angeles Times going back to 2008. Same with the New York Times going back to Kennedy. And that's not, the question is, what kind of paper do you want? In the first Trump administration, the Washington Post decided to be the democracy dies in darkness, resistance newspaper. And that was a very good business with progressives, liberals, people who weren't behind Trump. I think Jeff Bezos now is trying to position his paper as a paper that Republicans can buy too, which might be a sound business strategy in the long term, but doing it 11 days before the election is obviously something that has created quite a bit of a maelstrom and upset a lot of readers, and certainly a lot of Democrats and a lot of those fearful of a second Trump administration. So what I would say is healthy debate to have. It's a debate we will continue to have. But from a management perspective, this was less than ideal timing.
It's a very high-level debate, and yet, like on the ground with reporters, there's always been this like awkward dance. For print reporters, I've had the same types of arguments and conversations with readers who, like, you have to explain, yeah, the paper's editorial board made this endorsement, but the reporters are still impartial, and that's the editorial board. They're different than what the reporters do, but like we all share the same masthead. It is super, super confusing. So should newspapers in this day and age be endorsing candidates?
Well, look, you can take I don't run a newspaper, so fortunately it's not a decision I have to make. Let's go back to the business calculus here. If you are Jeff Bezos and you own the Washington Post, you are looking at a business that after Trump left office started churning subscribers and losing revenue to the tune of $100 million a year. Maybe you've concluded that that's not the kind of newspaper you want to run, and you want to run a newspaper that actually caters to a broader swath of the electorate, that is not known as being firmly aligned with one side of the aisle. And maybe that sounds like a more sound business plan. So from a business perspective, does it make sense to not every 4 years tell people who they should vote for, inevitably tell people that they should vote for the Democrat, and then inevitably fuel the sort of perception that the media isn't trusted? Jeff Bezos himself came forward and said media has less, people have lower trust in the media now than they do in government, which is already pretty low. So yeah, there is a business calculation there. Now, from a moral perspective, from the perspective of the future of democracy and the future of the republic. Do I think they should endorse? To be honest with you, Gadi, I don't think it matters. I don't think a newspaper's presidential endorsement has swayed voters, certainly in the Trump era. But I think it has done nothing so much as sort of perpetuate the notion that the media is aligned with the left or aligned with Democrats. It might not be a fair criticism. It might not be a fair interpretation, but that is what it has done. And I truly don't think you can make the argument that the Washington Post or the LA Times or the New York Times coming out and endorsing a Democrat really helps sways the course of a presidential election.
Now, I know you're not a newspaper owner, but I'm a big Puck reader, and I got to say, Puck seems to be as forward-leaning as it gets. Could you ever see Puck getting into the endorsement game?
That's above my pay grade. I think we're more likely to sort of, recommend Italian vacations and martini recipes. But, if we did, I would say the same thing. I can't see it swaying an election. Look, at the end of the day, the thing that news organizations, media organizations can do to influence the outcome of an election is do great reporting. And if you look at all of the sort of the furor and the criticism and everything that's gone on in the past few days, at the end of the day, the most impactful thing the Wall Street Journal or the Los Angeles Times has done to influence this election is done great reporting. And there are great reporters at both of those papers, particularly when it comes to politics at the Washington Post. What they do in their reporting will be far more influential than anything their editorial board does.
Dylan Byers, and you didn't even plug your brand new podcast, The Grill Room, just launched, right?
I just launched The Grill Room. Gadi, I hope you'll come on and join us sometime. I can return the favor.
Yeah, I heard the first episode. Amazing. Dylan Byers, thanks so much for your insight, man.
All right, cheers, man.
And with Election Day now just 1 week away, a bunch of federal and state agencies are working to keep bad actors out of the race. And it seems like these days there are a lot more ways to try to mess with an election than ever before. So NBC's Julia Ainsley sat down with one of the top cybersecurity officials in the country.
Tonight, just a week before Election Day, ballot drop boxes on fire, mountains of fake information cluttering the internet, and U.S. officials sounding the alarm about foreign countries trying to sow chaos.
There has been a fire hose of disinformation coming at voters.
Like this video that just went viral purporting to show someone ripping up ballots in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. But it's fake, according to U.S. agencies tracking election misinformation. They said in a statement that the video is part of a Russian disinformation effort to, quote, raise unfounded questions about the integrity of the U.S. election. The agency leading the charge, CISA, the nation's cybersecurity and infrastructure security agency. CISA is tasked with making sure votes are counted, poll workers stay safe, and information like this gets called out for the sham that it is.
They are looking to sow partisan discord, to pit Americans against each other.
CISA's director, Jen Easterly, says the agency is trying to set the record straight on its Rumor vs. Reality webpage. But they have some limits to their powers, like those ballot drop boxes, not their purview, and the agency practicing restraint when it comes to policing Americans' free speech. Like earlier this year, when about 50,000 New Hampshire voters received this robocall from a deepfake pretending to be Joe Biden, telling them not to vote in the state's primary.
Voting this Tuesday only enables the Republicans.
It wasn't CISA that jumped in, but the state.
That messaging was clearly a form of voter suppression. It was illegal and simply inappropriate.
The Secretary of State telling us his office blasted out a response on social media and in press releases. But why would the feds not get involved?
Why would CISA be reluctant to step in any situation, and why would they rather leave some things to state and locals?
Well, so states, by the Constitution, run elections.
Other constraints, Easterly says, are social media companies cutting their staff that handle government requests to remove disinformation, a hot-button issue.
Obviously, the great thing about America is you have freedoms to include freedom of speech.
If there's bad information that comes from an American citizen and they're protected by free speech online, do you respond differently to that than you would if you know it's coming from a foreign adversary?
Well, we've put out specific information about what our foreign adversaries are doing. But at the end of the day, we are just looking to put out accurate information.
Senator Mark Warner, a Democrat, pushing for CISA to do more, in a letter last month arguing that artificial intelligence has supercharged the threats to elections.
Do you think CISA should be the one to tell the American people when something is fake news?
I think that CISA hasn't been willing to lean in as much on the fake news definition because you have so many, candidly, Americans putting out fake news.
Come Election Day, if misinformation is swirling, Warner thinks CISA should be prepared to step in.
The most important thing is to get that word out as quickly as possible, and that may require a federal response.
But in America's patchwork election system, CISA may not be able to put out every fire.
What should voters do if they see something on Election Day that they're not sure if it's true or not?
The trusted source is your state and local election official.
Key for voters to keep in mind as they head to the polls and wait for the results.
Julia Ainsley, thank you. Don't go anywhere. We're just getting started. Up next, another Israeli strike in Gaza marks the deadliest attack in months, killing dozens of people there. What we're learning as the UN calls on Israel to address Gaza's dire humanitarian crisis. Plus, uncovering the lost, long Mayan city, how a student researcher accidentally found the ancient ruins hidden deep in the Mexican jungle using just laser technology. A world where childcare isn't free. That's not too far off from reality. New Mexico is the only state right now where most families don't have to spend a single dime on it, and it's already making a huge difference. That's later this hour in tonight's Future of Everything.
Without this, we would not see the finish line of any of our financial goals, paying off debt, building a home, opening up our own business.
Hey, welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world. A drone attack set fire to a Russian military school in Chechnya. It's believed to be Ukraine's first strike on the region since Russia's invasion. Now, Chechnya's leaders say no one was hurt in the attack, and in a video from Russian state media, the leader promised revenge, saying, quote, "We will destroy them." In Georgia, thousands protesting outside Parliament late yesterday over a disputed election result. Election officials say the ruling party won, but the president and protesters are claiming Russian interference. What happens next is unclear at this point, and the U.S. and the EU are calling for investigations of this election. The Kremlin denies any involvement. The Pope's Child Protection Board is releasing its first ever report on the protection of minors. It's calling for more transparency from the Vatican's Sex Abuse Office and pushing for victims to have better access to information about their cases. The commission is acknowledging there's still a lot of work ahead, but adds that this was a big step forward in addressing the abuse crisis. And the raging conflicts in the Middle East don't seem to be having much of an impact on oil prices, at least not in the way that experts feared. There were concerns that Israel's retaliatory strikes on Iran would hit oil and nuclear facilities, but they didn't. And now weak global demand and strong supply are taking over, sending prices down. Analysts say the price for a gallon of regular gas for a large chunk of the United States right now is actually less than $3. And in Gaza, an Israeli airstrike leading to the deadliest day in months. The U.S. State Department is calling it, quote, a horrifying incident with a horrifying result. More than 90 people, several of them children, were killed in Gaza. That's according to the Hamas-run health ministry there. The attack wiping out an apartment complex, and in response, IDF saying that they are conducting targeted operations. NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley has more tonight from Lebanon. Matt?
Another horrific day in the Gaza Strip. An Israeli airstrike hit a 5-story building that housed 200 people and killed about 90 of them, including 20 children. Now, this was compounded by the fact that among the injured, which numbered in the dozens, they couldn't reach or they couldn't get treated at the nearby hospital, Kamal Adwan, because that hospital has just endured a days-long raid by the Israelis that ended just a couple of days ago. Now, this is part of a worsening situation in Beit Lahia, where this building was leveled by this airstrike, and also all of the northern Gaza Strip, because we've been hearing from Gazan health authorities and from the United Nations that the humanitarian situation in the northern part of the Gaza Strip is getting critical. They're facing famine-type conditions, and this as UN agencies are warning that they have aid that's ready to move into the Gaza Strip, but it can't because the Israelis are blocking it, and there aren't enough entry points into the Gaza Strip to let that aid in. Now, this is part of continued bombardments all across Gaza, but it has been really focused on the northern Gaza Strip for the past several weeks. This is a renewed Israeli offensive in the northern Gaza Strip. The Israelis had operated there months and months ago and had essentially left it, saying that their business was done. This just goes to show that Hamas has shown that they can go back and fight in places where the Israelis have already launched and completed their operations. Now, in other news, here in Lebanon, Hezbollah has just elected their new leader, Naim Qassem, a guy who was essentially the deputy for many, many decades. He was its second in command to Hassan Nasrallah. He had not been considered the real successor. That man, a man named Hashem Saif ad-Din, he was killed in an Israeli airstrike just a couple of weeks after the leader, Hassan Nasrallah, was killed in this neighborhood right behind me in Beirut. Now, this just goes to show that the Israelis are picking off Hezbollah leaders time after time, one by one. It's not quite clear whether Naim Qassem is actually in Lebanon or not, but this just goes to show that Hezbollah, like Hamas, are both being badly beaten by the Israelis as they continue their fight on two different fronts.
Matt Bradley, thank you. And coming up, a legal battle is brewing in Colorado over the fate of 5 elephants. The question at the center of all of this, should the pachyderms be considered people in the eyes of the law? That discussion's ahead. But first, you gotta see this. This is from a family in Alabama who had a surprise visit from a bear that was way smarter than the average bear. You see here, he comes into the family's patio, finds a trash can. This is where it gets good. He starts dragging it out, kind of like in this freaky humanish way. Look at him. He's just pulling it out there, taking his time. And the bear did make it out with his late night snack, even came back for breakfast the next day. But the family made sure that trash buffet was closed this time, and the bear apparently had to find his next meal somewhere else. But he's so courteous, right? We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back, and here are some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. Nearly 700 homes have been evacuated in Colorado as crews fight a fast-moving wildfire there. The Highland Lakes fire was sparked by a house fire and is 15% contained right now. Investigators are trying to figure out if that house fire was criminal in any way. The man who attacked Paul Pelosi was sentenced today to life in prison without parole in a state trial. Now, this is in addition to David DePape's 30-year federal prison sentence. DePape attacked Pelosi with a hammer in 2022 after breaking into the San Francisco home he shared with his wife, then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. DePape spoke in court today, but the judge noted he expressed no remorse. And the Minneapolis man accused of shooting his neighbor faced a judge today as well. We first told you about this story yesterday, and John Salchuk's bond was set at $1 million. We also learned today that at least 10 people have filed restraining orders against him. Salchuk is charged with attempted murder and felony assault. And 2 men were convicted today of robbing an off-duty Secret Service agent at gunpoint in Orange County, California. This happened back in June, and the agent's phone, radio, and gun magazines were stolen. He was in town as President Biden attended a fundraiser. And Terry Garr, the actress best known for her roles in Tootsie and Young Frankenstein, has died at 79 from complications related to multiple sclerosis. She publicly shared her multiple sclerosis diagnosis back in 2002. Tonight, the LA Dodgers are looking for their Hollywood ending, and this could be the last of the game of the World Series. That's going on right now. The Dodgers lead the New York Yankees 3-0, leaving those Bronx Bombers in need of a miracle, and the odds are very, very long. Only one team has ever successfully overcome a 3-0 deficit in baseball playoff histories. If you're a Yankees fan, you probably already know that already because we're talking about the Red Sox historic comeback against them back in 2004. So are the Yankees going to pull it off? NBC News correspondent Sam Brock is hanging out in the Bronx today with those nervous fans. Sam?
Well, Gadi, good evening from outside of Yankee Stadium. A lot of fans here maintaining some semblance of hope, and why not? That's really all they can hang their hats on, but it's pretty incredible to watch Yankees fans work through the logic of this, right? They're down 0-3 to the Dodgers, as you well know. Odds are definitely stacked against them in the sense that of the last 40 best-of-7 series that have started 3-0 for one team, 75% of the time it's ended in a sweep. Once, the team that was down 0-3 actually came back to win. That was the Boston Red Sox back in 2004 against the New York Yankees. People here are walking through the logic. They're telling me tonight the Dodgers have a bullpen game. They only have 3 healthy starters, so it's only LA's bullpen going against Luis Gil, who is a legit starter for the Yankees, actually have like a rocket beginning to this season. The entire season now rests on his shoulders, and fans are saying if we could just win this game, then bring back our ace Garrett Cole for Game 5. Hey, maybe we can send this thing to LA, and anything is possible then. If you buy that logic or not, here's some of what we're hearing on the ground as this game gets underway.
This is an opportunity for history to be made, where it's never been done before to come back from an 0-3 deficit. So it starts with one game.
Very simple. I wasn't here for the first 3 games. I bring the ghost of Billy Martin with me.
So your very presence of Yankees legends past will change everything.
They are emerging from the memorials right now.
And Gadi, you can have all the optimism that you want, but there's some cold, hard facts here. The Yankees just need to produce runs. They led the American League this year with 815 runs. For the first 3 games of the World Series, they have scored about 2 per game, stranded 25 base runners. If they don't fix that tonight, starting with the big man in the middle, Aaron Judge, they are not going to live to see LA. That's the latest here outside of Yankee Stadium. Gadi, let me send it back to you.
Good luck. Sam Brock, thank you so much. And coming up, it's time for the future of everything. Tonight, we are talking about the future of childcare. It is one of the most expensive costs for families. But for some, if you live in New Mexico, it is free. If they can do it, why not everyone else? We're going to take a closer look at how they're pulling it off. And in tonight's Future of Everything, trying to tackle one of the top, if not the top cost for families, childcare. And it depends on where you live. But the median cost per year for one infant in daycare is about $8,300 in small counties to more than $17,000 in large counties. And those prices might actually be even higher right now. Those estimates are based on 2018 data, adjusted for 2022 inflation. And when you zoom out more and you look at some of the most expensive, Washington, D.C., far and away the leader, followed by Massachusetts, California. But you might notice New Mexico, not on those lists. And that is thanks to a state program that provides free care for most families. And NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans went out there to find out what's working and what other states can learn.
Mornings for Maggie and JJ Oviedo in their rural town outside Santa Fe are busy.
I'm squeezing those together.
With a baby and a toddler, they both work 2 jobs and have a long commute.
How fast are you gonna go?
But their biggest stress is gone.
Here we go, Pato.
I have 2 boys going to a wonderful school that would cost about probably $2,600 a month to have both of them here for free. It is critical for us.
I love you, baby. I'll see you tomorrow. La ropa está en su bolsa. Okay.
In 2022, an overwhelming 70% of voters in New Mexico voted in favor of a ballot initiative to divert a sliver of oil and gas tax revenue to early childhood education, a bipartisan effort amounting to $150 million a year.
We were thinking about what are we going to do? What are we going to give up in our monthly bills to pay this copay? Then we found out the state was paying it. I cried. Like it was that much of a relief because we didn't know how we were going to do it.
A relief, too, for Deyanira Contreras, who runs Kids Campus Santa Fe, where 90% of families receive child care assistance.
So the income limit in New Mexico, I think it might surprise people. You can make up to $10,000 a month in income and still qualify for free child care.
Yes, for a family of 4, 2 parents, 2 kids, and if they make up to $10,000 per month, they still qualify for free child care.
$120,000 a year income.
Yes.
The Oviedos say it gives them a shot at the middle class.
Without this, we would not see the finish line of any of our financial goals, paying off debt, building a home, opening up our own business.
The child care crisis isn't just high costs for families, it's also low wages, about $15 an hour nationwide, which contributes to high turnover for early childhood educators.
We're going to go to the tables, okay? Stay in the line, walking feet.
Teacher Randy Arona Torres used to work at a fast food restaurant to supplement his daycare income. Thanks to New Mexico's program, he's had a $7 an hour pay raise, and the state is paying for his college tuition.
Being a teacher isn't a struggle.
Right now, I don't see it as a struggle anymore.
For the first time, you can make a good living in this job.
Yeah, absolutely. I have additional money, to pay my bills.
In New Mexico, an early childhood teacher's aide can make $36,000 a year. Lead teachers like Randy earn more. With a BA, $59,000. With a master's, $65,000. An investment by the state, parents see paying dividends for their children.
I see the impact on all the kids here, all the parents here. It makes life better. It makes life livable.
Christine Romans, NBC News, Santa Fe, New Mexico.
New Mexico, how about that? Turning now to last week in the Oakland Zoo, where they celebrated the last remaining elephant there right before he was sent to a sanctuary in Tennessee to live out the rest of his life with some other elephants. Now, that cross-country move was a celebration.
It's really important that kids and adults get to see animals and learn about them, but at the same time, I don't think it should ever be more important than the animal's well-being.
Sad, but knowing that he's going to a sanctuary where there's other elephants and he could be in a herd situation makes me happy.
Yeah, but here's the wild thing. When it comes to what's happening in the legal systems, there are an increasing number of legal battles over elephants in captivity. Take a look.
It was a bittersweet day at the Oakland Zoo when longtime resident African elephant Osh was packed up and shipped to a sprawling elephant sanctuary in Tennessee. After the search to find a companion for the zoo's last remaining elephant came up dry, the zoo decided to transfer him to the sanctuary. He's joining 12 other elephants, all living in the high forests of Tennessee.
We absolutely know that this is the very best place for him to be. So we're all very, very sad, but we know that this is going to be a fantastic forever home for him.
The elephants here all have their own stories, like Nosy, a circus elephant whose time in showbiz ended in 2017 after a court found signs of animal abuse. And now there's another legal fight over the fate of 5 elephants in Colorado.
We maintain these elephants have a common law right to bodily liberty because of compelling considerations.
Last week, Colorado Supreme Court heard arguments brought by the Non-Human Rights Project, deciding whether 5 elephants at the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo should be considered people in the eyes of the law. The animal rights group is arguing a habeas corpus petition, which usually protects people against unlawful and indefinite imprisonment. They want the elephants protected under the same law.
At the end of the day, this case is about something very simple, which is allowing elephants to be elephants. Everything we know about elephant intelligence is that elephants cannot engage in natural behaviors when they are in captivity at a zoo.
Christopher Berry, the group's executive director, claims the elephants have suffered decades of trauma, saying videos like this, where you can see one of the elephants bobbing its head and swaying back and forth, show stereotypical signs of stress.
We believe that it is in the best interest of the elephants to go to a sanctuary.
The Cheyenne Mountain Zoo calling the lawsuit frivolous, arguing that moving the elephants at their current ages would be cruel.
We kind of felt like we're not sure this is about our elephants as much as it is about publicity.
The zoo calls the group an extreme animal rights organization.
They're moving from state to state to state where they think they might get traction. Our animals are a playing card for them.
In the past, the Non-Human Rights Project has been unsuccessful in arguing habeas corpus cases on behalf of elephants and chimpanzees, and it was the idea of precedent that caught the attention from the justices.
How do I know when it stops? What are the characteristics of a non-human individual that will allow me to say, okay, now we have hit that moment?
As you know, we're not just writing an opinion here for this case, right? Whatever we write is going to have precedent.
And with the case now in the justices' hands, a decision could come in weeks, deciding the fate of 5 elephants unaware about their legal fight over their rights.
Now let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Angela Sinandela on this. Angela, I mean, precedent that just sticks out so starkly here. What are the legal ramifications if this is set as precedent?
Yeah, so look, Gadi, this non-human rights project has filed 9 lawsuits across the country. And the closest that we saw happened in New York, where with this elephant Happy in the Bronx Zoo, they tried to argue that the elephant should be given freedom due to this same habeas petition. Now, there, though, the New York State Supreme Court, in a 5-2 decision, which was surprisingly close, argued that while elephants are intelligent and deserve freedom, that in this case, habeas petitions are severely limited to humans. Now, that's the same thing that's happening here in Colorado. But in this case, the argument is slightly different, where the group is trying to argue that habeas petitions cover legal persons, and legal persons don't have to be humans. They're just anyone that the court attaches a legal right to. So it's a little bit circular in that if the court then attaches a legal right to the elephant, it becomes a legal person. So the precedent here then would be that any animal that a court then would attach a legal right to could then have their rights as a person, meaning they could sue potentially, really with any cause of action, Gadi.
Okay, that's a lot to process there. But in terms of what happens to these 5 elephants, if the court decides to grant this, what could we see?
Yeah, so this Supreme Court in Colorado is just deciding right now whether or not these elephants can qualify as legal persons. Now, if it's a long shot, but if they do decide they do qualify, then this case would go back down to the lower court. And that's when the question would be litigated over whether or not these elephants actually deserve a path to freedom under this habeas petition. Now, also note that Justice did say that this is not the only path to the elephants' freedoms. This group could also be lobbying the state legislature, which might be a more appropriate avenue to secure the freedom of these elephants, Gadi.
Yeah, it seems like a much more direct way of getting something done. Angela Sinandela, thank you. And before we go, an ancient city long thought to be lost in the Mexican jungle for centuries has finally been found, and it's all thanks to a PhD student. Incredible story coming up.
What may seem like, a giant thriving city that's always going to be there can actually end up being covered by jungle in the space of 200 years.
Hey, welcome back. In the age of Google Earth and cameras everywhere and the power of the internet, it is very rare to just stumble upon a major discovery, but that's exactly what this grad student just did. In the jungle of southeastern Mexico, under layers of trees, he uncovered a lost Mayan city, and it could be massive. We are talking tens of thousands of people living there. So how was it unearthed after hiding in plain sight? Well, NBC News correspondent Marissa Parra explains.
Deep in the jungle of Mexico, a lost Maya city now found thanks to new laser technology. PhD student Luke Thomas says he was looking through data on the internet, and the numbers revealed a hidden gem.
I was delighted to find that the survey had in fact mapped lots of ancient Maya ruins previously completely unknown to the scientific community.
Across the sites the team mapped, more than 6,000 ancient buildings tied to the Mayas revealed their way of life. Pyramids and plazas, even a court for ball games.
All of the hallmarks of a lowland Maya political capital from about 1,000 years ago.
The scientists named the city Valeriana after a nearby lagoon, and based on the architecture, they think it was founded before the year 150. The Maya had hundreds of cities across Central America in its heyday, around 250 to 900 CE. But then the civilization collapsed and cities turned to jungles. Today, tourists from around the world flock to the Yucatan Peninsula to see the remnants. Wonders like Chichen Itza, Tulum, Coba, and now LiDAR, the same remote sensing technique used in self-driving cars and other robotics, is helping to discover more hidden cities like Axiotal in Guatemala.
It shows peeling away the points that represent vegetation to show buildings underneath.
And now Valeriana, showing us just how urban the Mayas were and how quickly things can change.
Maya civilization captures the imagination because it was populous and urbanized and complex. What may seem like, a giant thriving city that's always going to be there can actually end up being covered by jungle in the space of 200 years.
The new findings inspiring researchers to keep digging.
Power of the jungle. And Marissa Parra joins us now. Marissa, how has no one ever found this one before?
Well, I had a chance to talk to Luke, of course, who you just heard from, as well as Francisco Estrada-Belli, who is not only a fellow professor at Tulane, but also actually taught Luke. And so he kind of explained to me over the phone for this story, Gadi, just how difficult it can be discovering these kinds of sites. And what they used to have to do before this technology was they used to have to cut paths through these dense jungles, these dense rainforests and forests like what they have in Mexico. And it was very, one, invasive, and two, time-consuming and just overall taxing on them. They talked about sweating in the jungle, getting bit by mosquitoes, and it was just laborious. So it would take a lot of time to do what can now be a lot more efficient thanks to technology like LiDAR, Gadi.
Technologies like LiDAR and then AI that can take a bunch of data that LiDAR is accumulating and then really start to analyze it, right? Do you think that we're going to start to see like a massive amount of discoveries with this new technology?
Absolutely, and that's actually something that Francisco and I spent a lot of time talking about. There's a couple of numbers that I think are really striking before I explain LiDAR and how it's used by these archaeologists. So he described for me that just looking at the Mayan lowlands alone, they had collectively, archaeologists had spent about 100 years mapping out 500 square kilometers, Gadi. And using LiDAR, they were able to accomplish, in 2018, they were able to map out 2,000 square kilometers in 2 weeks. So really just illustrative of how much this technology has really made their jobs easier. And LiDAR, by the way, as we mentioned in the piece, is something that's been around for a while. It only recently became available for commercial use and even more recently by archaeologists. But it is very expensive. So while there's a lot of excitement, they said that just mapping out, my understanding is a few square kilometers can cost upwards of $100,000. So it does come at a cost, but it is making their lives much easier. They believe places like the Amazon rainforest might be able to have some really fruitful findings if they're able to get the funding to use it, Gadi.
Hopefully those costs come down, but also hopefully these discoveries happen respectfully. Marissa Parra, such an amazing story. Thank you very much. And an incredible civilization that is by no means lost. The Mayans are still here today. I am so proud to be one of their descendants. That's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. We'll see you here tomorrow. But until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.